Hello and welcome to another video, this time with an early access review for new Arc line after 100%. Before we move on, 100% in this game is rather easy. It takes around 15 hours. You need to do a mage playthrough to do it in one run, but I started with a technologist run so I could see the game with two lenses. As for what 100% means, I achieved 100% Steam achievements and explored the game as far as possible, finished all quests and saw all content that was available. First up, a short overview. The game plays in a Steampunk versus magic world. A godlike being set up rules. Those rules contradict the magic world. And now every time there is more technology, magic works worse. And if there's more magic beings and more magic utensils and more magic items, more mages, in a specific region, technology doesn't work like it should. The game at its core is a CRPG with a heavy focus on the RPG. It features turn-based combat. Companions and your character are more defined by the equipment you're wearing, not by the class you have picked. There's two classes. One is the technologist and one is the mage, the voodoo mage. Depending on what weapon you're using, what armor you're using, and what your preferred skill is in a specific section, it's going to determine how you're going to play. The environments are unique, the level design is decent, and you can find quite a few quests and solutions for quests by exploring. And this brings me to the 100%. Only one achievement is currently tied to the mage class. So if you want to complete the early access with all that is available to you, go with a mage. Of course, you're not going to be able to see specific things that a technologist sees. Like for example, you cannot repair mechanical structures, but a mage will see other and different levels and possible choices to skip some parts of the game to see something completely different. So the differences are significant. The same is true for dialogue and dialogue options. Speaking of which, dialogue in this game is mostly voice acted. You will find a ton of NPCs, especially for the main quest, that have amazing dialogue that is also very excellently voice acted. Every time I talked to an NPC during my playthrough, I was blown away by the performance of the voice actors. It is extremely good and it really sells the world, sells the characters, and makes you care for them or despise them. Something that is, for me at least, very important in a CRPG. And this ties also greatly into the story, because the story is quite unique. No matter if you pick a mage or pick a technologist, you're going to smuggle something into the city. This city is the new world, something built upon the new laws that are here for technology. Now first you arrive into the new world at a port town and you need to take a train to the main city, which is currently not available in early access. It is just a port town. It is basically a nice hot dog that you got at a stand and it's tasting great, but you're carving for more and currently there is not more. So you need to be aware of that. It's around 15 hours of gameplay currently in early access if you play both sides. But this is enough of a tasting to give you some semblance of what the story is about. And the story is pretty decent. Like I said, it is quite unique. I have not experienced something like this in ages. There is a ton of dialogue options, a ton of choices that you can make, and sometimes characters will start to hate you, outcomes will change, rewards will change, and this will carry through the world because the world state will change depending on what you are going to pick. If you align more with the technologists, your choices will develop the city towards more technology. Magic will weaken, magic beings will disappear, and more robots, more mechanical androids will wander the city and change the landscape. There is also a massive difference between how a technologist plays and how a magic user plays. Magic is much more static. In, for example, the voodoo section will always result in the same spells being available to you. There is also hellfire magic and celestial magic and possibly more later in the game, depending on different staffs you can find. But finding a weapon for the technologist, a gun, a sniper rifle, an LMG, a Tesla gun, multiple melee weapons like for example hammers or gloves that are massive and here for punching enemies. All of them have different abilities. Changing your equipment load will completely change how you're going to approach combat. They have different ranges, different abilities like for example more single target damage, more burst damage, much better sustained damage, more CC, much higher range. So overall I found the combat and exploration on the technologist side to be much more nuanced and much better. Magic currently needs a little bit more spice. However, Magic offers you a much more forgiving playstyle. You can utilize rifts to gain cards that you can use to improve your rolls. So for example, if you need a 20 to roll, but you only rolled a 2, you can use a card that gives you 18 additional points to succeed at that roll. However, using Magic has a drawback. You will become slowly but surely abhorrent, meaning something about you and how you perceive the world will change, how other characters will see you will change. And your companions reflect that. You will find a technologist companion, a magic companion, someone that is indifferent to everything and is just here to, well, save people and earn a few bucks. All of them have also very good voice acting and interesting agendas, some of which is already teased during your first 15 hours, so during the port section, and at least makes you interested in what the companions are about. Next up, the exploration and level design. Everything felt a little bit janky and unfinished, unpolished. Makes sense for an early access, because I didn't find enough stuff to do. I was able to interact with a ton of stuff to repair it or destroy it and unlock different passages or loot options, but more about the interesting oomph in the design. There is no fire, there is no toxic waste, there is nothing that made me play around something. The level design makes combat kind of boring. There is also not much choice in terms of abilities. If you equip a weapon, you cannot switch it in combat. Same for the staff. You're locked into the tools you have available to you. You still have your consumables like grenades or heal pods, and they can help, but you need to equip them before you go into combat. And the same is true for exploration for side quests. A lot of achievements are tied to side quests. So I was looking through the city to find them, and at first thought something was bugged, but it was actually locked behind main quest progression. So I needed to progress a little bit, and the world does change. Early access only encompasses the first port town. So once you leave with the train, the early access ends, you won't be able to come back here. All the quests, all the achievements you're missing, all the loot you're missing will not be available later. So I found myself to constantly run around the city, scan everything, so I'm sure I am not missing anything. And the game also provides you with the ability to highlight everything that is interactable. So you run around the map and try to interact with everything, so you're not missing anything. But later on, something new will appear, and you are sure you went through this specific part of the map already and nothing showed up, so you dismiss it. Actually, you need to press this button constantly, and this was quite detrimental to my enjoyment with the game in the exploration department. So next up, let's talk about the quests. Those are tied to exploration. Some will unlock something later, so you will need to talk to an NPC first, and then you need to explore the map for that specific item. Sometimes that quest will not show you what item you need to interact with, and you need to find it yourself after you talk to the NPC. If you went to a section where that item should have been, but you have not interacted with that NPC before, you will have missed it because it was not highlighted. It was not interactable. So you need to interact first with that NPC and then walk up to that, for example, stone. Some doors are just not interactable as long as you have not completed a specific stage of a quest. Now the quests themselves are very interesting and very unique. There is only a few quests that want you to kill enemies. Everything else is about exploring something. You need to talk to NPCs, convince them to show you something. You need to trick them to do something for you. You need to find specific items at a vendor. You need to track down something. You need to look at the environment. You need to combine all those things because you will be finding also notes and other interactable items that will give you hints what you have to do to complete a quest. And this makes for a very interesting quest design. It is very engaging and it makes you think, which not many games do in this time and age. So the quests were quite enjoyable for me. Sadly, none of them were voice acted. This was only done for the main quest, so that was a bummer. Next up is the combat and the progression of your character. Combat itself is not very complicated. You don't have that many abilities, and most of them are tied to the weapon you're using and not the class you're using. So your companion with the same weapon will have the same abilities that you have, and it just evolves around what is going to nuke down enemies before they can act. So at the start of the combat you roll initiative. If you have high initiative, you can use your abilities, nuke down enemies, and you win basically the combat. There's quite a few weapons that allow you to use very long range, so enemies cannot get to you, or allow you to dump the mag off a weapon so you can nuke them. Mages are even less nuanced than this because you're locked into voodoo magic, so you're going to cast your field of AoE damage that ignores the shield because enemies have armor that regenerates on each turn. Physical attacks need to go through that armor, but most magic does not. So you poison them, damage over time them, then you summon a town totem and they stand in their AoE and are constantly damaged and damaged and damaged. You will also gain a companion that provides you with healing magic. This healing magic is extremely strong, but also not all that useful because stuns are extremely overpowered. So if you stun an enemy, they lose their turn, and there is not really a resistance for that. If you hit them, they are stunned, and you're healed after combat regardless, which takes away quite a lot of power and usefulness for the magic class. There are no injuries or permanent stat decreases, there is no wound system, which can be quite enjoyable for some, but I found it a little bit missing and made the combat a little bit more boring. As for the progression in this game is basically tied to money or quest progress. If you complete quests, you will get items. Those items boost your stats. Most of your stats are non-combat stats. So you have endurance, you have persuasion, you have voodoo magic, which is a combat stat, or diesel tech, which is also a combat stat. But there are 6 combat stats and like 28 different non-combat stats. And all your combat stats can also be used in different dialogue options or to repair something or destroy something. Now, to improve those stats, you can complete side quests and side activities to receive permanent perks, but also every time you level up, you gain 5 points. Those 5 points can be distributed in each and every skill. And after a few levels, you will also gain a perk point. Now, perks are limited in this game to just a few because we are currently looking at early access. Later on, you will have more. Those feature a neat little flavor text and increase your stats by 5. For example, +5 mockery. But there is also combat related stuff like 25% more crit damage, which is just incredibly valuable and was a must pick for me. Same with initiative or same with block. And like I already mentioned, weapons are going to be your main progress in this game. You will find a pistol that can only do ricochet damage. So one shot that has a cooldown that deals AoE damage. Next you will find a pistol that can unload its mag. Then you will find a rifle that can shoot from very far away. One rifle will come with explosive rounds and piercing rounds, and one with a sniper shot that has extreme range and will ignore resistances and armor. For melee weapons you will find gauntlets and hammers or other heavy objects that you can use to pummel your opponents. Those are more designed with CC in mind, so something for your tank. You can stun enemies or you can push them back. And then there is magic. For magic you will find the voodoo staff. This voodoo staff will enable you to increase your damage of the spells you have. You have 3 spells. Then you have a celestial staff, which also increases the dice you roll when you're using your heal magic, but the spells don't change. So for that heal character, the heal spells are the same. And then there is the hellfire magic, which I have not had access to it because my voodoo magic or my celestial magic was too high and I couldn't equip the staff. All equipment types are tied to a specific combat stat. So if you want to equip the trench coat, you need to be a proficient in diesel tech. You want to use the tank armor, steam tech. The Tesla gun, Tesla tech. The pimp suit, voodoo magic. But this also makes vendors and crafting very interesting. All the stuff you loot you can utilize with crafting benches to craft new technology items, be it new guns, new gauntlets, new armor. But you can also find vendors that sell specific items. So the more money you have, the better items you can buy, and those weapons will be much more effective in dealing with enemies. So I was very happy when exploring on a technologist. And the same is actually true for the magic character. The more quests I did, the better items I got, the more powerful my character became outside and inside of combat. So a pretty decent showing for progression. And now let's talk about the technical state of the game, because there is quite a few issues. It's an early access title. Specifically, there is a few things that you will notice right away. Keybinds not available in the game currently. They are working on it. So I had to use my broken middle mouse button to rotate the camera, or rotate the camera with set amounts with using the 2 key buttons I had assigned on my keyboard. They are working on it, but it will take a little bit of time. Possibly it will be available day 1 in early access. The next thing that I encountered was a save bug. The more I quick saved, the worse the performance got. I have no idea how severe this bug is and how long it will take for them to fix it, but I reported it to the best of my ability, and I also found a way to prevent it. So for you, if you get to play the game, just quick save less. So basically don't save scum and play with the autosaves the game provides you with, and you should be able to get through the game without any hiccups in performance. Still, if you want to save scum a little bit, you will have to deal with bad performance around the 80 to 85 quick save mark. I reinstalled the game, I completely wiped my save, I did everything I could, but nothing helped except a new game. Now to sum it up, positives, exceptional voice acting. It's been a while since I heard amazing performances like here. The dialogue and writing for the game is really good so far. The setting is unique and I haven't seen this one done in a long time. The story so far is also interesting and hooked me, especially since it introduces some really nice and interesting villains and companions. The side quests are also great. I really don't want to spoil you here, but if you're going to play this game, enjoy the side quests. They're really, really nice. There is also a big difference between magic and technology in the playthroughs, and they significantly change the world, and the combat is okay. As for the negatives, there is not much build depth. The game is relatively shallow. You basically just exchange your weapon and your consumables, and that's about it. Also, the game for now is a little bit short. So it's around 15 hours, possibly if you stretch it, it's 18. If you rush it, it's around 10 hours. But the game is very promising. So keep that in mind. The performance is also not there yet, at least not with the quick save bug. If you don't encounter the quick save bug, the performance is quite decent. Nothing amazing. I had to lower my shadows quite a lot and the render distance also quite a lot to be able to play with stable FPS. And the controls are a little bit janky because there is just no rebinding of keybinds in pre-early access. Possibly it will be there with early access launch or shortly after. Next up, my thoughts on the 100%. I found it very enjoyable to do. It incentivizes you to do your side quests, to explore the world, and you really dig deep to get that 100%, to get the last achievement. One of the achievements is locked to the mage playthrough, and one of the achievements is locked to a very specific answer when you're faced with a dialogue option towards the end of the game or the end of the early access. I struggled very hard to find the last achievement for the 100%, but it's basically the third dialogue option when you encounter the dialogue option, and that's about it. You immediately get the achievement for that. You kind of need to be an ass. And as for my thoughts on the game itself, the conclusion, I found it is very much worth it for the 25 bucks. It's a very promising game and they try to polish it as much as possible. Especially with the voice acting and dialogue, I am very much satisfied. The progression and combat is more or less a second thought here. If they introduce more interesting items later down the line and more interesting weapons, I can see the combat developing to be very, very good. Progression, because there is no level-based progression, you don't get new spells or new abilities on a level up. I found that very boring and I hope they will introduce something for the classes, because otherwise it's not a class choice, it's more an alignment choice than anything else. This sums up the video. If you have any questions, please comment down below. Leave a like, leave a sub if you have not already. So see you next time and bye.